Bonjour, bonjour.
Today I'm going to teach you a few tricks to create a timber grain look, as well as paint some figures and create a small display base that would be at home on any competition table. I'm also giving you the chance to win this beautiful figure set from Dynamo, so stay tuned for details through this video. You may recall a few months ago I built the Dynamo model 47mm French anti-tank gun. As a reminder, it was a stunning little kit of a niche subject and I can't recommend it highly enough. And I always felt it deserved a scene, so today was the day that was going to happen. This is an old display base I had been using as a test bed for the wild grass effects I used in the Hellcat scene. Now, to remind you, that grass is a polyester faux fur product used for costumes and the like. You should be able to pick it up from a haberdasher or maybe even a crafting store. I cut it into clumps and then I can glue it in place to build up my wild grass. Now, I hadn't planned on using this base, but the scale and that wild grass experiment proved to be just about perfect for what I was looking for. The old plaster on the groundwork needed to be blended in with a flat earth, and a quick placement check was really encouraging. Variation to that wild grass was added with pre-purchased clumps of static grass, and vegetation and growth over that groundwork was also enhanced with a 9mm golden style of static grass, as it helped integrate the ground in with that wild grass. Sand and ballast freeze is a clear acrylic product that, when let migrate through those strands of static grass, it will dry and then hold them in place. I wanted to add scale to this display, and I'd been tinkering with a tree root to give me the form that I was hoping for. Digging around in the garden is a great place to source bits and pieces for your dioramas and vignettes. Adding the foliage to the trunk was easily done using a product from Jofix Studio. It's a natural looking branch with an in-scale leaf to it. Now, I just drill a small hole in that tree root and glue the branch into that. But try and be thoughtful with the placement and position of these offshoot branches. Always assess your work as you add a piece of that branch. I wanted this to look like it was an almost dead tree with a few new shoots starting to sprout. It's so easy to create something that adds a sense of drama and that organic feel I'm always looking for to add to my base. But over to the heroes of the scene now, and that is the Dynamo model gun crew. I'll briefly talk through the painting of these because I've done a few figure painting tutorials, so if you haven't seen them, I'd urge you to check them out. But the figures had been primed, and then to create a map of sorts for the flesh elements, a thin mix of AK Quick Gen human flesh and crimson red are let flow around the details in the face. And while that's drying, that same Quick Gen paint, only this time I use a British uniform colour, is used to show me the lay of the sculpt and what should be shadowed and where the highlights should be. For the shin guards around the boots, they were painted in that Quick Gen dark leather colour. The eyes are painted in with an ivory for the whites and a small dark dot for the pupil. Yeah, I know it looks super kooky at this point, but I can go back now with a light flesh colour to redefine the shape of that eye, and I'm also using that colour to start laying down my flesh tones. The uniform could then be painted in a field drab lightened with dark sand. Now, the trick with painting the uniforms is mixing the paints in with a matte varnish to control the opacity of that paint. The more varnish in the mix, the more translucent the paint becomes, which means I'm able to achieve graduations and highlights and things without worrying about stepping lines or tide marks, if you like. I gradually lighten those paints and paint in a smaller surface area just to create authentic looking highlights over the recesses and folds and things in the uniform. Now, be brave when painting in your highlights because you can really push the contrast on this far more than you may expect. For panel lining the figure, I have actually gone back to the old tried and true oil paints. I'm using a shadow brown, and by thinning it with a white spirit, I can let it migrate through any recesses, folds and details and things. But like I said, check out some of my older videos and I talk a little more in depth about creating flesh tones, as well as highlights and shadows on the uniforms. I wanted to experiment with creating a timber grain look on the ammunition crates, and this was the perfect opportunity, and this is where I think the gold in this video is, because you can use this on just about any model. The crates had been painted in a light and dunkelgelb, and different slats were brush painted with similar tones like dark sand and a buff, say, for variation. Small dots of flesh shadow and shadow brown can then be applied, and the application and position isn't really that important. It's probably more about the amount that I'm putting down, as you can see on screen. A brush moistened with white spirit can then be used to move the paint in the direction you are wanting the grain to run. Now, each time the brush passes across the slat, it is moving and reducing the amount of oil on that case and slowly starting to create horizontal streaks. A fine brush can then be used to further move the paint and gather it up to create darker spots of that colour, and it starts to represent the dark grains often seen in timber. The shadow brown oil paint can then be used again to apply a pin line wash around the deepest recesses and panel lines. You can see here on the other ammunition crates just how authentic that finish can look. I used the Tamiya panel liners here on those to get a better targeted application, but because they are enamel paints, they work just fine with the oils. This technique also works beautifully with timber handles on tools. Now, once the oils have dried, the boxes are treated to an all-over filter using a heavily thin mix of clear yellow. That yellow will give the finish a far more richer tone. I then applied the decals that came with the set, and what an incredible lift they give these pieces. The decals were some of the most delicate I've ever used. However, once in place, they looked absolutely amazing. A matte varnish will then seal them in and unify the finish over the part. I think it looks pretty awesome, but what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below. The figures had a small piece of wire drilled into their foot, and an accompanying hole was drilled into the base to add stability and an insurance policy should the glue fail. The tree I'd crafted earlier could then be glued, and the vegetation was further bulked up with smaller trees and assorted foliage. I still felt the scene needed a little more volume and balance through the middle of that base, so another figure was added and the stowage pile was complemented with a bedroll and an additional crate. Have you ever been inspired by something as simple as a single figure to build a base around? Well, that's kind of what happened to me when I saw the balance and pose of that fellow carrying the crate. Yes, I was one day hoping to create a scene for the gun, but the minute I saw this figure, the project went to the front of the line and just about built itself. There is something that appeals to me about these vignettes that capture a small moment in time. They carry with them a sense of life and motion. They also appeal to the non-modelers out there among us because there is a human element with implied action and motion, which makes the piece understandable and relatable. I really should be making more of this style of thing because I always enjoy the journey. But what did you guys think? Have you made something like this before? Would you like to give it a bit of a try? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope I've shown you just how achievable creating a little setting like this is, and you've picked up a few ideas for your own modeling. If you have, please be sure to give us a like. And remember guys, this is the greatest hobby in the world. Share it with your family and share it with your friends, and let's be proud of what we do. Until next time, I'll see you soon.
Sounds French. I love the French. Did you know that they invented mayonnaise?
Here's your chance to win this stunning figure set from Dynamo Models. Bail out. 35th scale. It's an absolutely stunning little figure set. Simply like the video, comment down below, and in your comment, I'd like to see the French flag emoji. If I see that, I know you want to be part of this competition. And if you're part of our Patreon community, complimentary members included, I will send you a second figure set. Patreon is free to join and there is no obligation there. So come on and join us over on that community like these other champions have. They're making a massive difference to this channel. Prize will be drawn on the 31st of August 2026 and I'll announce the winner on this channel shortly after. You got to be in to win it, so looking forward to seeing your comments down below. Good luck, guys.